That example when we talk about someone like Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman freed people. She was a liberator. But most of the people that took on that journey with her were runaway slaves. They just wanted to get out of the condition, out of the situation. And once they got out of the situation, they didn't make that journey back like she did to free other people. See, that's having the mentality of being a liberator. We need more of our people to recognize that the conditions will not change unless we ourselves take an active role in being liberators. We can't just be runaway slaves, which is escape.
Evolving barbaric hieroglyphs, I spit my gifts, shift your surface with vernacular skill. The raw is near, touching down like meteors, none other than black gods. Stones in my timepiece coming from black stars. Negativity for keep far away from doors. Single-mindedly destroying the ops and the odds. Just another warrior's quest. The past may get rest. Demons coming for my crown, get beheaded like the next. These blessings never threats, just to verbalize a message, catching energies of critics, all the Atari get deaded. Pray I stay alert on the field, be skillmatic in anything my enemies steal. Be dead actions, I proceed just life I lead. Beneath it so many seas, to win it's our time to align stars, so spirits lead. Who could war with me, catastrophically or audibly? Given no choice by God's law, I'm Lucifer on streets.
People, y'all, today for our public political education class, we're gonna have Brother Ron Deuce go ahead and give us a class, and we definitely look forward to the information tonight, and it should be a good thing here. So let me go ahead and make him the presenter, and we'll get started here. Can everyone hear us okay?
I can hear.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, Brother Ron, you should have the floor now. If anybody comes in, remember to go ahead and admit them.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's share screen.
We can see it.
Everybody can see that. All right, y'all. So I want to thank y'all for joining. There's a couple people that are here that didn't even know I was a part of the Black Panther Party in San Diego. This is probably their first time learning about it. But yeah, this is us. This is me. Let's see.
That's a pleasant surprise, brother.
It looks like do it this way. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm also a rap artist, producer, audio engineer. I joined the Black Panther Party actually during the quarantine. It worked out well. My initial meeting was with Chairman Henry Wallace. And I met him at a showcase that I was performing at. I came down to San Diego. I helped him with a food drive. And from there, I stayed engaged, wanted to learn more, wanted to educate myself, and here I am. So today, can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
I got it.
All right, cool. All right, bet, cool. So tonight's topics, I want to touch on the effect of Black fathers missing, and also within the household. I want to touch on the ADHD war on Black boys. Of course, I want to touch on a little bit of hip hop and rap and the effect that it has on our culture. And then I want to do a timeline on how we got here, and I kind of want that to be interactive. Like I want us to kind of fill in some blanks. All right, so let's see. All right, so what caused the breakup of the Black family? So, of course, there's a lot of things that we can point to. First off, we can point to slavery and fathers being separated from their families, babies being separated from their families. But one of the things that I really wanted to dive into, which happened not too long ago, was the crime bill, better known as the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act which went into law in 1994. Now, in the past, former President Bill Clinton was known throughout the Black community as the first Black president, when the idea of having a Black president was far-fetched. Clinton's relationship with the Black community was strong during his 1992 and 1996 presidential campaigns. Clinton gained the Black community support, particularly Southern African Americans, and being that he was from Arkansas helped him a great deal. This is evident, according to the New York Times editorial board, reflecting on the fact that Clinton won 75% of the Black vote on Super Tuesday in 1992. However, due to the crime bill he passed in 1994, he is now known as one of the scapegoats who caused the mass incarceration of Black people, specifically Black men. So here are a few facts on the 1994 crime bill, and I want y'all to feel free to chime in if y'all want, and let's have a conversation about this. So one of the facts, it passed by Congress and was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. One of the things it did is overturned a section of the Higher Education Act of 1965, permitting prison inmates to receive a Pell Grant for higher education while they were incarcerated. So I have a few friends who've been in prison, and now, given that they've made it harder for you to get an education in prison, you pretty much getting free labor, which is why you have a lot more Black men being incarcerated simply because they want to fill up a bed. And that states this here in Title II of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. It provided incentive grants to build and expand correctional facilities to qualifying states that enforce mandatory sentencing of 85% of a person's sentence of conviction. That authorized the initiation of boot camps for delinquent minors and allocated a substantial amount of money to build new prisons. 50 new federal offenses were added, including provisions making membership in gangs a crime. The act included a 3 strikes provision addressing repeat offenders. Brother Robert Ward, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I definitely want to start right there, because I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind when we look at this is that 3 strikes provision. That right there was a game changer. And the thing about former President Bill Clinton is, like, when he went on the Arsenio Hall show and played that saxophone, I think that's what won Black folks over. Black folks really felt like, because he could play a saxophone, and obviously being on Arsenio Hall show, that we had somebody in that was going to be all in for us. People even alluded to him being like the current Kennedy, John Kennedy. So those are the kind of comments that was being floated around in regards to Bill Clinton being in office. But what we have to recognize, people, is that there's only so much that can be done when you have from a presidential or federal level, when a lot of times the way things are handled down or dealt with at the state and the local level anyway. So this 3 strikes provision thing that came into play at the time when that was happening, I think Black folks didn't really recognize how much that was going to impact our community. A lot of us didn't see that coming. And so it's important that we look back and we recognize just how easy it is for wolves to operate in sheep's clothing. And just the fact that I think too many Americans, too many people put too many eggs in one basket in terms of thinking that there is going to be a savior. It even goes into the whole thing of what happens with COINTELPRO, to where they talk about the messiahship and talk about our mentality as a people to feel like somebody is going to be our savior, instead of us recognizing that we have to be our own savior. And so this just, to me, is just one of those examples of that taking place. And also keep in mind, in 1994, we were still dealing with the aspects of crack cocaine in our community. So when this 3 strikes law came into play, and even going back into what was going on with Ronald Reagan when he was in office, we in a tough on crime situation, Black folks really started feeling the heat in prison. The whole prison industry took a real good spike in terms of folks going in. And so looking back on this kind of stuff, people, let's just be aware of the fact that when we talk about a president, period, no matter what skin color, the bottom line is they in office to do a certain thing. They in office to keep the United States government in the course in which it's operating. And so there's not going to ever be any drastic changes done. And oftentimes what happens is just to appease the people, period. So this definitely worked toward the destruction of the black family.
And that's what we're seeing right now too, with Joe Biden being in office. Joe Biden won because of the black vote. And one of the first things that he did when he got in office, I believe, was pass is it anti-hate for Asians law. Mm-hmm. And one could argue that he hasn't done anything for black people since he's been in office. So I want y'all to chime in too on other things that caused the breakups of the family. Would anybody else like to say anything? Anybody else got any other takes on what caused the breakup of the family?
I wanted to chime in, especially with the 3-strike law, because my father has been in prison since I was 6 years old, and he hit his 3rd strike. And every single time that he was arrested, he was high on crack. And that's why when Brother Winter said, it was still a big issue with the crack cocaine, when I sit back, because I've finally started speaking to him recently, and he's been sending me all of his documents and arrests, and I'm reading everything every single time he was high on crack, and it was designed just for that. You guys brought the drugs into the neighborhood. You knew that these people were going to be using it. And I asked him a few times, like, do you even remember any of these events? He can't even recall because he was so high. And that just goes to show right there, that's exactly what broke my family up.
Yeah. Exactly. And instead of sending him to prison, he should have been sent somewhere to get help. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So other things that hurt our community were cuts to social welfare, cuts to school academics, cuts to school sports. A lot of schools, especially in California right now, don't have sports programs. A lot of community colleges are cutting sports. And I know that, a lot of people would say that we're always pushing our kids to be actors, entertainers, or ball players. But one thing I can say about being able to play a school sport is that it provides a way for you to stay in school and potentially get a higher education. My brother Miles ended up going to Dixie State, which is a Division II school in Utah, and he did excellent, went on to get his master's degree, and it really saved him from being in the street, or graduating from high school early, not knowing what to do, where to go, and then finding himself into trouble. So instead of funding prisons, why aren't we building like more libraries, better schools? You know what I mean? Like developing after school programs, community centers. When I was growing up, I attended Francis Albright, which is in South Berkeley. And it pretty much was a program in which Black kids would go to, and we would go on field trips, you know what I mean? We had, like free lunch programs, so anybody from the community could come and get free lunch. Now, when I go back to the community, there's no Black kids in the programs. So where are Black kids going? You know what I mean? Most of our neighborhoods are being gentrified. So these are all some of the things that are causing the breakup of the Black family. So let's see, nearly 20 million kids in the US are growing up without a relationship with their fathers, which is strongly correlated to these kids experiencing a range of lifelong adversities, from poverty to school performance to social and emotional problems. This is Dr. Charles Daniels. The epidemic of absent Black fathers in today's society is vastly increasing and getting worse and worse. According to 2011 U.S. Census, over 24 million children live inside of a fatherless home. Let's break it down and divide the pie into the different races in America. 1 in 3, 34% Hispanic children live in father-absent homes. And 1 in 4, 25% white children also live in father-absent homes, while nearly 2 in 3, 64% African-American children live in father-absent homes. According to the National Fatherhood Initiative, children who live in a fatherless home are on average at least 2 to 3 times more likely to be poor, to use drugs, to experience educational, health, emotional, and behavioral problems, to be victims of child abuse, and to engage in criminal behavior than their peers who live with their married biological parents. Growing up, I actually grew up without my father. Growing up, I didn't see how having a Black father affected me until I grew up and had my own son. And then I realized, like, I'm putting my son on game at an early age. So when I think about like not having a father, I think about how I used to run around with all my partners, and we pretty much thought we knew, you know, what the hell was going on, and we ain't know nothing. We was exchanging information that was essentially wrong, incorrect, and we were being misled. Now, the flip side of that, on the flip side, I want to present a lyrical breakdown by Kendrick Lamar. This is a new song off his new album, Mr. Morales and the Big Steppers, called Father Time. And Kendrick actually discusses growing up with a father. I always assume, like, you know, because I grew up without a father, that if you had a father in your life, you know, you were good. Everything was swell. But Kendrick actually gave me a new perception. So I wanna read these lyrics to y'all, and then I also want to get y'all thoughts on this. Looking for I love you, really empathizing for my relief. A child that grew accustomed jumping up when I scraped my knee. Cause if I cried about it, he'd surely tell me not to be weak. Daddy issues hit my emotions, never express myself. Man should have never show feelings. Being sensitive never helped. His mama died. I asked him why he going back to work so soon. His first reply was, son, that's life. The bills got no silver spoon. Daddy issues. Damn everybody. Go get your money, son. Protect yourself. Trust nobody. Only your mama know. This made relationships seem cloudy, never attached to none. So if you took some likings around me, I might reject the love. Daddy issues kept me competitive. That's a fact. I don't give a damn what's the narrative. I am that. When Kanye got back with Drake, I was slightly confused. Guess I'm not mature as I think. Got some healing to do. Egotistic, zero giving, and to be specific, need assistance the way I was brought up. What's the difference when your heart is made of stone and your mind is made of gold and your tongue is made of sword, but it may weaken your soul? Ain't got no daddy, grow up overcompensating, learn about being a man disguised as being gangster. I love my father for telling me to take off the gloves, because everything he didn't want was everything I was. Anybody got some thoughts on that before I dive into it?
I think that's super powerful right there, and it's just a whole lot that's really being said that I can reflect on, especially the whole part about how he talks about not expressing, you know what I'm saying, and not expressing any emotions as it's looked upon as a sign of weakness. And I really think that's kind of a mistake that we tend to make, and we pass on from generation to generation, not knowing, you know, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we come up in an environment that views certain types of emotions, you know, kindness and stuff like that as weakness in the hood. It's like when I was growing up in young in the hood, I remember cats would be like, man, why you smiling? If you smiled at a cat, you know what I'm saying, like, hey, it's a good day, and you smile at another brother, that would start a fight because you smiling. And I remember it was referred to as, oh, you a friendly ass nigga, ain't you? It's like, so that was like, you know, when you think back on it, man, it's just it's sad when we see how we've been turned against each other to that degree. And a kindness and happiness and unity as it comes to being around your own peers, was all viewed as a sign of weakness. And so forming a clique and forming, you know, kind of the gang mentality where we gonna only look out for us and have that as a result of a lot of times of what we missed out on within our having fathers in a household. But at the same time, it was also passed down by a lot of men that were fathers from the standpoint of, again, not being looked upon or viewed upon as being a victim. But we taught that to each other, but yet we gave white folks a pass when it comes to that. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword, and it's also just doesn't really make sense when you think about it.
Right.
So a lot of dysfunctionality growing up, man, that we dealt with.
Yeah, and this song it's a lot because it's like his dad was taking his childhood away from him because he told him like that. He told him how he said his dad told him to not to trust anybody, only his mom and pretty much his grandma. So that means if I'm telling you not to trust anybody, I'm telling you not to trust me, and I'm your father. And that's what it's looking. That's pretty much what he's saying. So he's comparing all of the emotions that someone that grew up without their father in the household, he got the same issue. So he's like trying to ask. I see it as he's posing the question like, oh, is it he putting me through all of this? So is it that bad?
Mm-hmm.
Not having a father there? So that way you don't have to deal with all this bad advice and, you know, the stress that he's bringing to me while he's here.
Absolutely. And piggybacking.
I understand this.
Brother.
Oh, my bad, brother. I
ahead,
understand
Chief.
this. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I understood it. On a level of, you know, like just breaking it down from, you know, what people of the culture have been through, you know, objectively, you know, it seems very unhealthy. But I also do see the place it has, being in a survival mentality and some of the lessons that really keep people alive, you know. Coming from that struggle. No, it's not conducive necessarily to mental health, but you know, these are some of the lessons that, you know, and that goes into the symptoms versus, you know, solving the problems or the conditions to have this kind of mentality. But I don't see it as unnecessary, if that makes sense. And it's fucked up. Yeah, it's fucked up. But these are some of the learned behaviors that unfortunately have kept people alive in their own neighborhoods, because they're met with the conditions that we've been faced with for way too long. So, you know, there's a certain mistrust or distrust in the community that I'm not going to say necessarily needs to be there in certain circumstances, but, you know, to keep a child alive when you can't necessarily be around, definitely has its place. Call it a hot take, call it what you want, but I understand.
I think Carrie had her hand up.
Sure.
Okay, I'm driving, but can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm coming from a perspective, and I just wanted to share it real fast. I'm coming from a perspective actually not having my mother, and I know it's more so tailored to talking about men, but also too coming from a perspective of having a twin brother and an older brother who one was raised with a father, me being raised with a father, and listening to women that does have a mother and the negative influence that that was on them, but then also listening to women that did not have a father, and I did have a father. It's just different, all perspectives. But seeing my twin brother and my older brother doesn't have the same father as us and never met his father, versus seeing my twin brother around and being raised by my dad or our dad, it had different effects from a military parent perspective. So there's so many perspectives, but I just wanted to share that quickly.
Thank you for that, Carrie. I appreciate that.
Of course.
One of the things that stood out to me was when he said, "Daddy issues hid my emotions, never expressed myself." I think that I realized that a lot of Black women feel like Black men don't show enough emotion. And then, like, this might be a hot take, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard women even say that part of the reason why they date other women is because other women give them that emotion and genuine, you know what I mean, that love. They're more open when it comes to things. And I notice, like, even when I have like conversations with some of my friends, and the dynamics of their relationships is really like tough. Like, they're hard to pierce, you know what I mean, in a sense, because they've been hiding their emotions, because they don't express themselves, you know what I mean? Whereas women, they like that emotion. They like to be able to express themselves. They like to be able to, you know, feel love. Another thing that really stood out to me was when he said, when Kanye got back with Drake, I was slightly confused. I guess I'm not mature as I think, got some healing to do. I had to check myself because I feel like I still haven't, you know, forgiven Kanye from saying, you know, slavery was a choice, or wearing, you know, the Make America Great Again. And I want to know, have y'all forgiven Kanye, or do y'all still have some healing to do?
let me speak on that real quick, because I actually talked about that thoroughly one time, and a lot of people got mad at me because I completely uh overstood what Kanye was saying when he said that. Because remember, going back to our Panther training, when we talked about the difference between choice, options, and decisions. And so when Kanye said choice, and this is my interpretation, by the way, when Kanye said slavery was a choice, it had to do with the fact that at any given time, we have the ability to decide whether we want to live or die. And so, therefore, those that endured slavery, that did not jump off the boat, that did not charge the slave master to the point to where, you know, you either going to kill me or I'm going to kill you, basically endured the middle passage, endured the situation for a greater day. But the choice is either endure slavery or die as a people, you know, from the standpoint of that. So he's basically, the way I interpreted it, he's saying we have a choice because we can't let someone else put our lives in our hands. We have the ability to decide to whether we're gonna deal with it or not. And that's what, again, the difference between choice and options. And that's how I viewed that. So it's not to say that, oh yeah, well, we don't have to be slaves like that. That's not what he meant by choice. He basically mean it from the standpoint of it, each individual person has the power. And when we allow people to take our power away, that's typically us giving our power away. And to me, that even speaks back onto something else I was going to say about one aspect that I want us to all think about in regards to this whole situation. Emotionally, we find ourselves, by the time we become adults, that we're not where we should be in comparison to where we are maybe intellectually, or in comparison to where we are from the standpoint of just physically. Our body physically matures and grows no matter what it's going through. Whereas our emotional body and our spiritual body and our psyche, it can be impaired, and it can be retarded or stunted in terms of its growth. So what we find happening all the times is we're dealing with adults who physically are matured, but emotionally may be stifled because of certain traumas that they've experienced in their life. And those traumas oftentimes hold you back from being able to be emotionally capable of operating at the level you really should be operating at that age. And I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't recognize about mental health is the fact that our emotional body is not necessarily on par with where we are physically. Same thing mentally, again, and spiritually. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the inner destruction of our vessel from the standpoint is not something that you can physically touch and see, but you can recognize it through our actions or our inactions. So being that not being emotional got us to become an adult because we had to deal with this survival of the fittest mentality. By the time we become an adult, now we're at a childbearing age, and we're at an age now where we're able to reproduce. Emotionally, we're not ready for that because we had to shut down certain things in order to survive based upon the conditions that we grew up in. So now all of a sudden I want to become emotional. Now all of a sudden I want to get with a woman and try to learn what it means to be compassionate. But at the same time I have to stick to my street values and my street perspectives that protected me on up until this point. But then at the same time, now when you go to a job, oftentimes we find ourselves in a situation where now you got a white man or somebody else yelling at you and treating you, attempting to treat you like you a child versus treating you like the age you actually should be respected at. So now you face with that dynamic. So it's so many different things that can tug at us. And I think with the social age that we're dealing with now, with the information age of the internet and social media, we're finding a new level of stagnation that's happening in terms of people's social abilities. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's a great point, Brother Robert Ward. And that actually brings me to a point where when I think about growing up and I think about the hostility between cops and black males, when the father figure isn't in our life, and then you have a cop that pulls up on you and he's trying to tell you, you know what I mean, to stop, and he's, you know, frisking you, and you know what I mean, he's being blunt and using force. It's sort of like it's traumatizing, and it's new because, you know, you never had a male, you know what I mean, to tell you what to do or ask you to abide by a certain amount of rules. So there's a lot of what's the word for it? Rebelliousness, you know what I mean, when it comes to black men dealing with police officers. All right, so let's move on. All right, so here's something I just want to read. I found online about improvement of social services by Dr. Charles Daniels Jr. How is it that when my wife and I are having children, there's a doctor designated to support my wife, there's a doula, there are nurses that are designated to understand her process thoroughly, but there's no one really designated to understanding my process as a father, my mental health experience as I transition into fatherhood. This system essentially does not prepare practitioners on how to engage fathers effectively. This is a major problem in the US. It goes down to society's expectation in America of what men should be doing and what they're not doing. We have to stop assuming that when men are angry, justifiably so, from not being able to see their kids, they're just horrible people with criminal records who don't care about society. There's more to their pain and there's more to their story. I feel like I literally had to learn how to be a father just on a day-to-day basis. Of course, I adopted like the values that my mother taught me, but I feel like I'm still like learning every day, you know what I mean? And I have family members who I consult that, you know what I mean, are dear to me, but every day I'm still figuring it out. So when I read this, it made me think like, why aren't fathers given like, you know, some kind of course, or why don't we have any, you know, support once we have children? Guys, got any thoughts, comments on that before I move on?
Sorry, I actually feel like, because I do parent consultation with parents about their children and behaviors, and there are multiple mother and father trainings or social groups out there. I feel like being in the field that I am, that the Black community, do they want to go to those groups?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I always try to figure out like where's my Black community at. I know, like, I hear they need help, or they wish there was some groups to help out there with certain circumstances with their children, or just being a parent in general. And there are many different organizations and groups within each community. It's just that, do they want to, or maybe they don't have time, or the statistics would probably relate to other cultures and not their cultures, and would they be able to handle the information that's presented to them?
I think what Laverne said, the very last statement hit the nail on the head. Are they ready to take? Are they willing to accept the fact that the way they are raising their children ain't necessarily the best way? I think what happens a lot of times with us, especially within the Black community, is that we ride our ego on our chest, and that prevents us sometimes from being able to be open-minded to the fact that maybe the traditions that we've learned and the things that we've been doing, the way we've been doing it, ain't the best fit. And that are we ready to accept the fact that we do have some growing to do? Oftentimes, again, when we talk about the fact that through trauma, we've been emotionally stagnated. People find these things out sometimes once they're a grandparent. And what I've experienced is, to me, my father was a better father once he was able to see me with my children. Because what happens is, and now it almost puts you in a situation of hindsight, why they are in the midst of trying to raise a young child, especially if they're suffering from, again, post-traumatic slave disorder, all types of things that cause them not necessarily to raise their child properly. When they at a position of grandfather or grandparenthood, oftentimes not being in that direct role, they are able to see the mistakes that they made with you by watching you make the same mistakes with your child. So when they go to talk to you now, or when they say, "Hey, you might should check the way you're doing this," or "How about this? This is a better way to go about this." That hindsight oftentimes is the recognition that the things and the behaviors and ways about that they went about dealing with you, that they were really still figuring this out themselves. And so by the time they become a grandparent, they're better at, sometimes, this is what my experience is, they're better at actually being a parent at that point. So when we lose our connection with our elders, I think that creates this cycle to where you don't have the generational embodiment of being able to have these social groups to learn from. And so then young parents oftentimes feel intimidated, or they let their ego get in the way of them receiving advice or even reaching out for advice. It's like psychology in the Black community. You hear a lot of Black folks don't want to go to psychiatrists and deal with mental issues, because it tends to make them feel weak, or make a lot of time people feel like they're a failure because they're having to seek help on certain things. And so we got to get out of that mentality. We got to get out of that mindset and just accept the fact that growth is something we should all be doing, our entire lives. We're never too old to learn something. And we're gonna make mistakes. Just the point is, if I'm attempting to reach past that and do better, that's what should count. And so we got to help our community heal from that.
Absolutely. I'm gonna bring in Johnny Goliath.
Good evening, guys. Can y'all hear me?
Good evening. We can hear you.
Yes.
I agree with what's been said on this topic. I do believe, like the lady mentioned, that there are services out there. Uh, I also believe that it's a common thing that we as people fear what we don't know, and fear always holds people back. So we don't know. I mean, lack of knowledge or ignorance or whatever you want to call it. Um, it's the fear that holds us back as a people. Um, and I truly believe that there are services out there, but we don't know enough about it, which brings in the fact that, oh well, it's going to make me look weak, or it's going to make me feel like I'm a failure. But it's help, right? So that's what it's there for. It's there to help you. But we don't know that. All we know is the struggle. All we were taught was the struggle. So to try something new makes us fear it for some strange reason as a people. So I just think that what we fear holds us back from a lot of growth, from a lot of knowledge, and we grow accustomed to what we're used to. That's my take on that. But I do believe that there are services out there. It's just that we're not educated enough to accept it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you chiming in. I appreciate you chiming in as well, Laverne. Thank you for that. All right, let's get it. All right, so I want to play a video by Dr. Umar on ADHD. Recent studies show that there's a 70% increase in ADHD identification for Black children. Black boys are diagnosed with the disorder at a higher rate than any other group of students in the United States. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a little bit. Then I'm going to share it again. All right, can y'all see this?
Yes, we can see it.
Kwanzaa, I do a tour to raise consciousness and spread information. Yeah. The information that I have, my expertise in school psychology is directly related to special education because it is the school psychologist that does the testing, the psychological evaluation that qualifies you for special education. So if you are a special ed student in the United States of America, because special ed is a federal law, so it's everywhere, right? If you're in special ed, a school psychologist puts you there. So we're called the gatekeepers of special ed because we decide who goes in, who goes out. How do y'all decide? Well, how? IQ tests, achievement tests, visual motor assessment, psychological assessment, adaptive behavior measure, parent interview, teacher interview, classroom observation, review of the record. We put all that together and we decide whether or not we think. Now, here's what I need you to get. Notice what I said. We decide whether we think that kid has a reading disability. Whether we think he has ADHD. So if he's slower, if he's just slow, if I'm just slower than you, yes, somebody can say, Memphis, he needs to be. Exactly. And that's why Black boys are over-identified for special ed because the determination is very subjective, my brother. And less than 1% of all school psychologists are Black. So 99% of the people putting our kids in special ed don't look like them, don't understand them. And that's why I'm in Houston. Speaking the people up. I'm there with my.
All right, let me stop sharing for a bit. Let's go back to Keynote. All right, so I want to touch on that.
Hey, can I touch on that too?
Yeah, do your thing, brother.
Because that right there hits home for me because my oldest son had been diagnosed with supposedly diagnosed with ADHD, and it's all about communication. And Dr. Umar, when he was here on last Friday, everything that he was saying, like I can attest to because a lot of my son's teachers they don't look like him, so therefore like their patience and everything like with him. And like trying to speak to him and you know they couldn't relate, so a lot of times like he was always the picture painted of him was, oh, he's really polite, but he's disruptive. He's a leader, but he's a bit impulsive. And so it's so those were always the adjectives that was always thrown out to us about my oldest son. And it was just like when he's at home, he's good. He focuses on anything. It's just how he relates to that person. And if you can't relate to him, then you'll never be able to reach any student for that matter.
I agree, brother. Thanks for sharing that. I want to bring Kim up. How you doing, Kim?
I'm doing well. I definitely want to touch bases on that too and agree with that because a lot of times, the school system, they do want to label our kids as defiant or ADD. And the first thing they want to do is, pump them with medication. And I actually had an experience last year where I was going through some issues with my son, dealing with his emotions, with his father not being in the picture. And so him not knowing how to deal with his anger. And before they even spoke with him, the first thing they wanted to do was give him medication. And they prescribed him 2 medications. And at this point, I was desperate for some sort of help because at this point, I didn't know what to do. So I thought I was picking the best medication for him. And he was on it for about 6 months to a year. And I ended up having a meltdown. Like my anxiety went through the roof, and I decided I'm going to take my son's medicine. It's a kid's dose. I should be okay. I'm an adult. When I tell you what it did to me, I felt so bad, and it makes me feel bad for all of our kids because I felt like I was high as a kite, and it took me 3 days for me to come down. And I can only imagine what our kids are feeling like when they are pumping them with all these medications, and we don't know what it's doing to their body or their chemical imbalance or anything like that when their brains aren't fully developed. So that was my 2 cents.
I love that, Kim. I'm glad you shared that. Carrie, go ahead and talk to us.
I want to say so much. I just want to say real quick first that I'm so happy that this conversation is being had, whether it's 5, 10, 20, or 50 people, because the knowledge of this is important. And when we receive this information, it is so important that we spread that information onto others and spread it quickly. So I just wanted to say that was on my spirit. But I was never exposed to and all that kind of stuff, actually, until I became an adult. And going to school for psychology and learning about it and actually taking the medicine, it really does have that kind of effect. I'm not going to, just for privacy and confidential reasons, I'm not going to say who I know that was treated that way, but it was a male that is in my family that was on a special bus that took medication and that was separated the average student. And so I don't know what that was. I don't know what that does I do know even taking Adderall, so I can only imagine what it does to children and teenagers. And
I think your signal breaking up.
Can you test? Can y'all hear me okay? Can you guys hear me?
You was cutting in and out.
Can y'all hear me now? I'm sorry. Maybe I'm
Yes,
in a
we
bad
can.
area.
We can hear you now.
Oh, good. I'm okay. I'm cool right here. Okay. But I was just saying it does have a lot of negative effects. And recently I've been able to learn from my twin brother who's in holistic herbs and learning about holistic medicine, alternate or alternative methods from not taking the medication. So I just wanted to just put my 2 cents in there because I have taken Adderall medicine, but I also too, like I said, I have a male family member that was going through that in the school system, and I know that it had an effect on him mentally and even physically.
Go ahead, Laverne. You got your hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And then Storm.
No, or the Storm. Sorry.
I said after you, then Storm.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to mention that, so I'm a behavior therapist and I'm in school to be a behavior analyst. And what Strong Black Man was speaking about his son and the diagnosis, I see a lot of that with some of my clientele when they get diagnosis, because I can get there and do another assessment, and things that I do, build a rapport for 2 weeks to get to know the child and get to, just identify them in different ways. With the psychologist, it's totally different. You go in, there's no building rapport, and you're just running tests. And with children, you got to kind of warm up with them so they can, just be familiar with you. And if you're trying to test a child and they don't know you, or say that teenager has an attitude, then you're going to say misdiagnose them and put acquisitions on them that it's not even true. And I get a lot of that where we have to put another letter in to the parents or to the therapist or psychologist and say that I think this child needs to be reevaluated because this is not what we're getting on our side. And I think that happens a lot. And sometimes, I don't know who mentioned this, the young lady who was speaking about, I think her son or her brother. Actually, I just totally forgot what I was speaking about. But
Kim was speaking about her son and the medication that they gave him.
Exactly. Okay, so with behavior therapy, for things like that, which some of the community doesn't know that it exists, before children are able to go to other therapies or medication. With behavior therapy, we're able to come in and evaluate what's going on, with them before they even get these different medications or alternatives that they would try or parents would try with the children. And the only way to get behavior therapy is to have a diagnosis. And a lot of parents don't understand that and don't even know about it. It's kind of like a field that's just coming out of from hiding, basically, and being introduced into the community. So it's just observing behaviors and what happens and the consequences, what happened before the behavior started. And if we can see this in these different things that are happening, we're able to, kind of self-monitor the way we move. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Storm, was good.
So thank you for speaking tonight and bringing up this whole topic. I also work in special education. And one of the things I would say as far as ADHD goes is primarily it's based on questionnaires, how they do the diagnosis. So what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of parents come in saying, I can't get them to do this, I can't get them to do that. And so it starts this narrative that the child is out of control. Then you have sometimes it is the teacher. But what people need to understand is just because the school says we think your child is hyperactive and that they have ADHD does not mean you have to agree with them. My son was in first grade and they tried to tell me that, and my mother was like, oh, they're saying that he needs this, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you do it? So I did let them do part of the assessment through our medical insurance, right? I did that part. I wouldn't let the school assess him. And basically what they told me is he's too young for them to tell, just like Dr. Umar said the other night. And I said, that's it, we're done. I'm not going any further with this. And the reality is sometimes people want kids to be perfect. There are no perfect kids. There are a lot of good kids, but there are no perfect kids. Kids are hyper, they have energy, they don't want to listen because they're kids. And so sometimes we have to stop as adults expecting them to be perfect. And there are things that you can do to help work with your kids to get them to be a little bit more attentive in school, to get them to understand what the expectations are and to follow those expectations. But there is no perfect child. And so I would say two things to people if you're presented with this idea is, number one, you need to work with your child. And number two, You do not have to say that your child has ADHD. You do not have to agree with the diagnosis. So don't let anybody put that on your child if you don't agree with it.
Thank you for that, Sister Storm. Brother Ward, you want to close it out?
Yeah, I want to bring this up, and I mentioned it in the chat, but I have to say it and make sure everyone see it. It's a book called Black Parent Advocate that Dr. Umar put together. He was actually selling this book at that event that we attended and did security for. This entire book is basically about how knowing what to look out for within the public school system and the school system in general, in terms of how they will come after your children and how they will mislabel the children, and it teaches you what to do. Throughout the whole book, he gives example letters of what you can write and how to address it. And I just want to read one real quick, brief letter. It's a letter request to rescind an evaluation. It says, "Dear Mr. Eisenhower, I recently gave permission for my niece, from whom I serve as the legal guardian, to be evaluated for your school by your school psychologist as a request of the child study team to determine eligibility for special education services. After further investigation into this matter, I've decided to rescind my request. This letter serves as my official notice to have all psychoacademic assessments being conducted on my child discontinued immediately. I plan to obtain professional tutor for my niece and to help her improve her reading and math skills. My niece attended an elementary school for the past 3 years that had not qualified for annual yearly progress." And it continues on the back. It's like a 2-page letter, but basically he gives you an example on what to write to rescind base a mistake that you may have made, for them to start that evaluation process, to start trying to go down that path that sister spoke on earlier. So I would recommend everyone get this book that's dealing with this issue, and want to know more about how to protect our children in the school system. Again, Black Parent Advocate. That's
Absolutely. Laverne, you raised your hand? Sister Laverne?
Oh no, sorry.
Oh, for sure. It's all good. All right. Let's get it on. Let's see what we have next. All right. So I wanted to pose a question. So we got prominent leaders like Khalid Abdul Muhammad, who was part of the Nation of Islam, who later left and joined the new Black Panther Party. Of course, you got Malcolm X, leader of the Nation of Islam, later left, became a strong advocate for Pan-Africanism. Marcus Garvey, one of the well-known ideologists of Pan-Africanism. He emphasized unity between Africans and all the Africans in the diaspora. Got Madam C.J. Walker, first Black hairstylist to become a millionaire, first to develop the hot comb. Michelle Obama, first lady to be Black president. Then we got Maya Angelou, author, poet, a civil rights activist. She wrote "I Know Why the Cave Bird Sings." We got Dr. King, we got Huey P, and then we have Nelson Mandela. So my question is, why is there a lack of Black men and women striving to follow in the footsteps of the like? MLK, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Huey P, Bobby Seale, Fred Hampton, Michelle Obama, Madam C.J. Walker, Khalid Abdul Muhammad, W.B. Du Bois, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, Nelson Mandela, Annalie Cooper, and so on. So why is there a lack of Black men and women striving to follow in the footsteps of those prominent leaders? Anybody want to chime in?
Everyone wants a get rich quick scheme. No one wants to take time.
That's a good answer.
What I
I'll
was gonna
chime
say
in.
is something similar.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
Was a little similar to what Sister Laverne was about to say. What I was gonna say is like no one really wants to create anything. They just want to like take whatever's already out and then enhance it, or make it better than what it is. So that instead of they want to create the 2.0 version.
For sure. My take may be that our people have simply fallen asleep. I believe that we had a lot of groups, a lot of prominent figures who were disbanded, infiltrated by COINTELPRO. A lot of our leaders were murdered. A lot of our leaders were in fears for their life when they did, pursue changes within the Black community. I got two people that raised their hand. Let's see. Go ahead, Johnny Glaff.
Yeah. With the exception of Michelle Obama, I think we need to keep in mind the era of when those brothers and sisters were doing their thing. Back in that day, they put in the footwork. You had to grind and get it in, and by all means necessary, no pun intended, but that was the way. Today's society is different. Everything is social media. They run to the internet to find information on how to do this and how to do that. But back in the day, you had to grind, man. You had to get it in, put in that footwork, put in the elbow grease, and obviously it paid off. So I do think we need to keep in mind that era of, when those great people that you have on the list did their thing. And that's not saying we in today's society can't do that. I think times have changed. But I believe in old souls, so I believe in elbow grease. I mean, I don't even use my dishwasher, so it's but I just think that may be playing a big part in that. It's the fact of how they did things back in the day and how we are doing things today. That's my take on that.
Let me add a little more perspective to that as well, because Johnny kind of hit on the same thing I was going to say. What we got to keep in mind also is that in that time period, racism, it was very obvious that racism was institutionalized and that it was systematic. The laws were such, especially growing up from the standpoint of what they did through Jim Crow, to where it was just blatant, out in your face. This is how racism is, and we dealt with a segregated society. All of the people, most of the people on there, it was part of an environment to where you dealt with segregation. So from that standpoint, things were in a pattern to where the only way we were going to have a better life was that we had to do it for ourselves. And what happened is I think through the advancement of civil rights, which created assimilation for our people, what happened then is that we started more or less pursuing individual challenges and goals, and then attempting to try to reach back and help our community, versus having the mentality that we need to take our community with us in terms of empowerment. So what happened is a lot of the prominent people that were progressive within the communities through assimilation, they became well off and developed finances for their family and created generational wealth for themselves, and then became philanthropists. So from that standpoint, when you're looking at it like that, you're not teaching people, as they say, how to fish, but you're gonna just feed them. So then we get a whole influx of social programs that are geared toward getting you by, which what we refer to within the Panther Party is coping. So now our approach has went from empowerment to coping mechanisms. And so we have to get back to recognizing that we have to empower our community. We have to go back to developing a actual community that understands how the dollar must be circulated within that community, and that we as a people come together and have people power, versus the individuals attempting to do great things and then giving back to a group of people. Because at that point, instead of teaching leadership, what we're teaching at that point is just handouts. And we have to move away from that handout mentality. And I think social media has put us even more so on that path of wanting to be this individual that has answers but no solutions. And see, we have to recognize there's a difference between an answer and a solution. Right now, through social media, everybody got an answer, but people are not really pulling back to the position of recognizing that solutions must be developed. Solutions attack things at their core. And I tend to think that the younger generations have forgotten the foundation of all of the oppression that we deal with is racism. And so we've started diving into a lot of the different aspects and subdivisions of racism, but not attacking the root cause of oppression, which is racism. And so from that standpoint, I think that disconnect within that generation, which goes right back into the whole thing about how we started talking about how the destruction of the Black family is based upon these generational forgetfulness that we have. And since we don't connect with our grandparents and learn from them and so on and so forth, the generations are being deprived of the knowledge and of the historical significance of what was done and how to see those same patterns so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future generations.
I agree, Brother Robert Ward. And another thing that the younger generation has pretty much gravitated to is entertainment. And Brother Dr. Umar spoke about that when he was here. So I want to touch on entertainment. Sister Storm, you want to chime in?
I was just going to add that I think, kind of touching on what Chairman was talking about, is one of the things is that we, in yesteryear, people that made their kids understand you're going to have to work hard to move to the next level, and everybody needs you to move to the next level. But at the same time, they were feeding into their kids that you are able, you are capable. And it seems kind of like now, there's a lot of young people I talk to, and I ask them, like, what's your passion point? What are you good at? And a lot of them will tell me music, which everybody can't possibly be a musician, right? Somebody else has to do something else to help society, right? It takes many, many people to make this all work. But the other piece is, why don't our kids have any other passion? Why isn't anybody being told, you're really good at math, you're good at this, you're a great writer, you're great at organizing, anything? And so I kind of see it as partially we're not feeding into them that they are great at something and kind of helping them hone their skills in whatever their gift is, and partially not instilling in them the value of that hard work that the last generation had. It's not going to come to them. And it's almost like we think sometimes that we're white. We think we have the same privileges as white people, and that's just not the case. That's not the society we live in. And I will tell you, I heard Trayvon Martin's mother, after he passed, give a speech. And one of the things she said is they didn't talk to him about being Black and talk to him about there's going to be a problem if you're out at night and you're doing certain things. That's not fair, but it is a reality. And I think that same type of mentality goes into like this idea of everything is going to be given to you, like you might see your peers at school who might be of another ethnicity. That's not our reality. We're going to have to work hard, and we're all going to have to work hard.
I love that, Sister Storm. Kim, you want to chime in?
Yes, I did want to chime in on that. I also feel like we haven't been instilling in our kids with creativity like we used to back in the day. I know I had an incident with my son at his school where he painted one of the doors a different color. And the teacher automatically said that he did it wrong. But he was like, but what if a car is in an accident? It's going to have a different color door. And it's like we're not teaching our kids to think outside the box anymore. And I think that's why our kids are not striving to be anything more than what society is telling them what they can be, because they're afraid to reach out for that.
I'm glad you said that. And speaking of schools, I remember my freshman year in high school, there was a carpentry class that you could take when you were a senior. So now it's like even the academics and what they're teaching us in high school don't really propel us after we leave high school. You know what I mean? Like, we aren't learning about taxes. We aren't learning a trade. And when I went and saw Dr. Umar speak, it was really telling when he talked about, you know, how we are pretty much in a system where we feel obligated to send our kids, you know what I mean, to college right off the bat, and they don't even know what they want to do. At 18, I had no clue what I wanted to do. Of course, I was doing music at the time, but I ended up going to community college, and I pretty much damn near wasted my time for about 2-3 years in community college, jumping around, just taking the classes that was necessary just to say that I was in school, because I didn't know what it is that I wanted to do. I saw another hand raise. No? Okay, we're good. All right, Brother War, you ready to move on? Or Storm, you want to chime back in?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my hand up, but I will say this. I do not agree with young people not knowing what they want to do. I'm a firm believer that by the time you turn 18, you should, again, have an idea about what your passion point is. And whatever your passion point is, you can work that into some money. But if there's nothing you love to do, then we got a real problem, because then you don't have direction. And so I would just say that I think that that's something we really have to work on. Yes, enriching our kids so that they're exposed to more, so that they understand what they like. You know, I remember, like, my son growing up, he was taking karate, and the karate teacher just wanted him to do karate every Saturday. And I was like, no, he's not doing karate every Saturday, because maybe, I think, like, at the time, Home Depot had some kind of classes for kids. I was like, maybe he gonna like to do woodwork. I don't know. But he has to have a chance to figure out what he likes. And so I think that point about kids getting to be creative is really important.
Absolutely. All right. So, damn, Brother Robert Ward, you were on point. I got so many more slides. I was afraid I wasn't going to cover the time.
Told you.
So look, I at least, how much time we got, Brother Robert Ward?
You get a good 30 minutes if you need it, up to 30. You got it?
So I'll just touch on a little bit about hip hop and black politics, and I want to just share a video I did with y'all. Let's see. So when hip hop began in the South Bronx in the late 1970s and early 1980s, it was akin to a social movement, largely created by African Americans for African Americans. Hip hop is now linked to artists who are conscious and lyrical, whereas rap is sometimes highly viewed and linked to criminality and violence among blacks, ghetto conditions, misogyny, and negative images of women in music and videos. According to Perkins, rap music has morphed into various subgenres in the last 30 years, including but not limited to black nationalist rap, gangster rap, female rap, alternative or political conscious rap, and pop rap. Rap artists examine a variety of issues such as racism, economic conflicts, the practice of democracy, police brutality, black politics, the absence of the black father, healthy relationships between black men and women, or lack thereof. In fact, by the year 2000, the RAAA reported that hip hop was the second most popular musical trend in the US. A handful of rappers take a more political stance for humanity and rap about current events in the music rather than succumb to the materialistic and misogynic mores that have been covered extensively in academia. Hip hop's popularity provides a unique opportunity for savvy political rappers to frame their political messages of ideology and rebellion against society ills. And the reason that I threw this in here is because I do believe that our young people are mostly inspired by entertainers and rap artists. And I do believe that hip hop music can be used as a tool if it's used correctly. There's a music video I did called Mayor KKK. Let me just play half of it for y'all.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
We living in America. I mean America, KKK. If police don't kill us, then we hit by a straight. If straight bullets don't hit us, my partner might be the plan. We lost KC, Life, Snoop, over a dice game, but it gets deep. If you walk the enemy from a distance, but let as soon as the judge passes, sitting sick and tired of hearing through him. Man, fuck that. We need to go Black Panther and take the inner cities back. They brought over crack. They brought the guns in. Here, be lazy, nigga. Welfare kick in. We had more doctors, lawyers, businesses to employers. We would dream on to be further and make better choices. Instead, I look at dope boys driving Rolls Royce. Didn't make the NBA, but somehow I got a ball. I ain't had shit all my life. I ain't trying to work no 9 to 5. I'm building your business that's only paying me pennies. I'm buying these products that's owned by white supremacists. In the black neighborhood, they only selling us chicken. What's cancer? I got the answers, the shit we eating. They think it's bullshit when I say one day I'm trying to be vegan. I still ain't got my 48, cause look, I'm trying to get even. They still look at us as slaves, so what the fuck you call freedom? Just to get ahead, I work twice as hard in preseason, come season, even after killing shit postseason. They say when you 30, you supposed to settle in and quit dreaming. Can't kill this black man, ambition, I dream. The Coliseums, my motto is carpe diem. We all gon' die, nigga. Either I make you somebody rich or make you lives, nigga. Either building networks or looking for work. You either living by faith or scared in church. You either getting this work or you getting the work. I'ma get rich, show me before they rip me a hurt. We fight up here.
That is all. Deuce the Truth. If y'all want to finish that video, this is the title of it. Deuce the Truth from America KKK. Had to plug myself in. That's a music video I shot in the Bay Area, right in my neighborhood in South Berkeley. I think this was after the death of Trayvon Martin. Yeah, I did this some years ago, and I'm very proud of it. You got any comments? Anybody anything to say before I move on? No,
I enjoyed it. I think we need more. We need more of that. You know. So I think going back to what you was talking about hip hop and rap in general, we got to keep in mind that what folks need to recognize is that we are at war, and being at war, music is a very vicious tool that can be used against you by the industry. The same thing that we go into when we talk about the foundation of racism being what is used against the people, the same thing with music. The reason why certain music is promoted more so than positive progressive music is for the same reason, is because what happens is it helps to add the the school to prison pipeline. It helps to create this situation to where folks have false narratives and false recognition of where they should be focusing and dealing with. So, and it's not just hip hop music. That's one of the biggest things that I think people misunderstand. And that just simply seems to be the fact because of hip hop was developed in the inner city, the black communities. But from that standpoint, all music has always been used, as well as media period, has been used to manipulate and seduce the people to be asleep and not pay attention to what their real power base is in terms of being involved in situations. So when these young brothers and sisters speak from their pain and from their frustrations and from what they see happening within the hip hop industry, we should pay attention and take note that, hey, there is something that needs to be corrected, something that needs to be worked on within our community. And when we have positive progressive songs and music like what you're putting out on that note, then they want to suppress that, because a lot of times people, when they think of music, they think of entertainment. When they think of entertainment, then people think of smoking, drinking, relaxing, and escapism. So too often, music has been viewed as a form of escapism. And when people are attempting to escape something, 99% of the time, what they're trying to escape is the fact that they're in situations they don't like. What they're trying to escape is the fact that they don't want to think about how they're being oppressed. They don't want to think about the fact that they're being oppressed. They don't want to think about the fact that they got to work a 9 to 5, like you mentioned in that lyric that they may not like. They don't want to think about the fact that they got family members that's been recently killed, and the gang violence that's going on in the community, and so on and so forth. So they turn to music as an escapism. And so people tend to turn to negative music because negative music invites in alcohol, drugs, and partying, and certain types of things that make you want to not think about facing your trials, facing your conditions, facing your situation, and making it better. That tends to be one of the biggest things that we need to take away from that, is that we can't, as a people, simply try to find ways to escape. It's like the difference between being a freedom fighter and a runaway slave. And I use that example when we talk about someone like Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman freed people. She was a liberator. But most of the people that took on that journey with her were runaway slaves. They just wanted to get out of the condition, out of the situation. And once they got out of the situation, they didn't make that journey back like she did to free other people. See, that's having the mentality of being a liberator. We need more of our people to recognize that the conditions will not change unless we ourselves take an active role in being liberators. We can't just be runaway slaves, which is escapism, but we have to be able to stand up and liberate. And that's kind of the thing that I just wanted to emphasize with that. Appreciate you, brother.
For sure. All right, so I'm gonna start wrapping it up. Got some lyrics from Talib Kweli. Let me go ahead and read this. Freedom's a road that's seldom traveled. Watch hell unravel right before the eyes of the soldier who fell in battle. The single mother who raised her daughter to bear the sacred water, and I take the hand of every man who make an offer. To black kids wishing they white kids when they close their eyelids, like I bet their neighborhood ain't like this. White kids wishing they black kids that want to talk like rappers, all backwards, it's identity crisis. The industry inside us is vipers with fangs trying to bite us. Drug suppliers is the healthcare providers. We caking, making narcotics out of household products. We ain't working out till we exercise the demons that's inside us. Plus they seem to just provide us with enough rope to hang ourselves. That's Talib Kweli, Africa Dream. It's a song by Jay-Z that I really love. Jay-Z is one of my favorite artists because I respect his growth. Jay-Z came from Marcy Projects, selling crack cocaine, and now I believe him to be a man that he's evolved from that and has become a very enlightened individual. So I want to read his song lyrics Spiritual because I actually got wind of this song not too long ago, and he recorded this in 2016. So what really tripped me out is the fact that I'm sure, many of us could name popular songs from Jay-Z that have been, played over and over on radio, but a lot of people probably have never heard this song. So here we are. Yeah,
Brother Deuce, real quick, someone's trying to come in. I think someone is in a
Oh, my bad. Let's see. How do I check for that? Let's see. Participants. Okay.
I don't know if you have to minimize the screen, minimize the slide or something, and then you can see it.
Okay. Oh man, yeah, I don't see anybody. Let's see. Are they still trying to come in?
I'm not sure. I just saw it in the someone put it up in the chat that someone else was trying to get in.
Oh, Tax is trying to get in. Okay. Yeah, I've been getting all the notifications. Can you ask them to try again? Okay, I'm gonna continue. And then I want to dive into this right here too. Let's see. Pray your father's father wasn't touching his little daughter, creating transgenerational trauma. That shit'll haunt you. Pray your little cousin ain't fall from the place that you fall asleep. Of course, it's hard for me. Ain't those ain't washed in a week. I ain't changed clothes to the Black Album. Y'all rap about them. I wrestled in these streets till I tapped out them. Them boys WWE. Y'all can have at them, smack dab in a hurricane of emotions. Can't even raise my little daughter, my little Carter. We call her blue because it's sad that how can I be a dad that I never had that? Shared it in a million pieces. Where the glass at? I need a drink, shrink or something. I need an angelic voice to sing something. Bless my soul. Extend your arms. I'm cold. Hold me for half an hour until I'm whole. One of the things that really stood out for me was going back to being raised without a father. Jay-Z was another Black man without his father. So he says, how can I be a dad that I never had that? It goes to show how lost we've become as a people just from the mere fact of not having the father there in the household. Or even, you know, as Carrie touched on, not having her mother. It creates transgenerational trauma that pretty much, like Ho said, haunts you. Anybody else got any comments on this? All right, let's go. All right, so last but not least, how we got here. So this is my last slide. I started building on, oh, Kim has a question. Let's see. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something real quick. I also feel like when we don't have our parents in our lives, whether it's our mother or our father, it makes us lose a sense of our identity. And for me growing up, my father wasn't in my life, but I did have a stepdad, and he treated me like as if I was his daughter. He was in my life since I was 18 months, and he's still in my life till this day. But even with him being in my life, I can't say that I didn't feel like I lost a part of my identity, me not knowing who my father was. So I feel like a lot of times our kids struggle with who we are because we're not connected to our immediate bloodline.
That's very true. And I found myself asking a lot of questions when I finally met my father and he was 18. And I asked him, you know, and I even asked his mother, my grandmother, like, well, where did we come from? As far as they know, we came from New Jersey. But I asked him, I'm like, but what about after that? Like how do we get here? And it's sad that we don't even have that information to point to. You know what I mean? I did Ancestry, and it looks like my bloodline goes back to Benin, Togo, Ghana, pretty much West Africa. But no one in my family can tell me how we got here. You know what I mean? So there's a big disconnection, you know what I mean, in the Black family when we can't reach back and see who we are and where we came from. My bad, I muted myself. Did y'all hear the last thing I said?
No, you were muted.
The whole time?
No, when you, I think
No,
the
it's
last
like
thing.
the last sentence too.
Oh, got you. My bad. All right, so this the timeline. I kind of wanted y'all to help me sort of build on this before we get out of here. So we could, you know, right now, so I got slavery. So we had slavery that pretty much, you know, scarred us as a people. Then we had groups that were created to liberate Black people, which were infiltrated by the FBI, COINTELPRO, which aided in the disbandment of prominent groups that served as beacons to our communities, such as the Black Panther Party. The murder and death of prominent leaders like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. We had school systems that took out trades in schools. We had crack cocaine, which entered the neighborhood, the crime bill of 1994 that implemented the 3 strikes law. Then we had George Bush, which didn't help at all. Then, I mean, a lot of people got their take on Obama, but I believe that Obama entered the office. I believe his mere presence gave hope to Black people, but with having a majority of Republican House, he wasn't able to do much for us. Then we had Trump, who entered the office, incited racism across America. And now we got Sleepy Joe, who hasn't done a darn thing. What is it that I'm missing in here?
Someone's trying to say they're trying to get in again.
Okay. Hey, brother Robert Ward, how do I turn it over to you so you can be
I can do that real quick and then I give it back to you so you can go over the presentation. Hold on a second.
Oh, for sure.
Let me see here. I don't see anybody in the waiting room.
Yeah, I don't see anybody either. I don't know if they don't have the correct link or what. I'm not sure.
Just a second here.
I mean, it might catch the next one at this point because this is my last slide. We can wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Oh,
okay, go ahead.
For sure. So I wanted to, is there anything I'm missing? Anybody got any last, comments they want to make? I really appreciate all of y'all being on here. I appreciate the conversation, everyone chiming in. I know a few people had to go. I had a few people that were in Texas that joined. So I know out there it's like 10:30 right now. So I appreciate them for jumping on. But y'all got any last minute comments? Any thoughts? For sure.
I just want to say thank you so much. This was a great discussion, and you presented some great information.
Appreciate that.
Let me comment real quick on the timeline. One thing I do want to make note of, and this kind of goes back to us talking about, the initial aspect of destruction of the family, as well as how it is reinforced. Because when you look at this timeline, it kind of picks on the things that put us in a position of being subjugated. So when you talk about you starting with slavery, now you're dealing with the fact that we as a race of people have been domesticated. So once you strip a person of their culture, their language, their way of life, their tradition, and their ability to connect with families, because let's go back to the beginning aspect of how that happened. When we dealt with slavery, remember, families were stripped from each other. When parents have children in slavery, the children are automatically considered property of the slave owner. So as soon as the children are born, they will take them children from the parents, and then they will sell them off into slavery. And remember that they would not really, for the most part, allow strong family ties or connections in slavery. So the slave master oftentimes will breed to selectively decide how they want to quote unquote breed their stock. So even though you may have a particular person that you bond with, from a relationship standpoint, slave master come in a house or come into the slave quarters and say, hey, I'm bringing such and such to buck with this person, and that may happen to be your actual woman at that point. So now here you go, having to be having to basically allow your wife to sleep with someone else because slave master wants to impregnate and wants to create a different type of quote unquote bloodline, so to speak. And so these kind of things went on. So we did not have the ability to attach ourselves to each other, because in doing so, you're bound to get heartbroken, you're bound to get stepped on, you're bound to get ripped apart in terms of your family. So coming from an environment towards slavery basically prevented us from even having a semblance of a connection with one another. Again, they made sure that we couldn't speak our native language, our native tongue. They made sure that we didn't know how to read and write. And when we were able to read and write, the first thing they taught us was the slave Bible. They had a specific version of the Bible that was basically uh, all geared toward creating a docile human being. And from that standpoint, we were not considered human beings, but we were property. So going back to the destruction of the family, starting with slavery, that was basically at that point embedded within our makeup and our DNA. And if y'all not familiar with that, look up a concept called epigenetics. And what that dealt with is the fact that these type of things now get passed from bloodline to bloodline. So even coming up out of slavery, we now have this dysfunctional thing that is working against us, that we have to fight against through our environment. But if we're now living in an environment that goes from being in slavery to Jim Crow, from also being hunted down by the KKK and all these other things that they taught us to in perpetuated us staying in a survival mode, that's the difference between us having the ability to rise up. Because when you're in a survival mode, oftentimes you're more concerned again with your survival than being able to live. So what we're needing to do in going into aspects of solutions is we have to go take ourselves out of this survival mentality and survival mode, which causes us to shut down certain aspects of communication, certain aspects of emotions, because we're thinking like from the standpoint of a predator. You either predator or prey. So they keep you in that polarity. Keeping us in that polarity keeps us from ever evolving emotionally and psychologically as we should, to the point to where we are producers. So we're still caught captive in this mentality that causes us to be operate like domesticated beings. Whereas in order for us to rise up and be solution based, in order for us to rise up and empower ourselves, we have to start living and stop surviving. So looking at those different things, these are all ways that they continually embed it, and then they do it, psychologically do it subconsciously, by making us continually feel inferior as a people. So we got so many things working against us. But the more we learn about recognizing the war that we're engaged in, and seeing the conditions that they're putting us in, then we can start forming real defenses against it. But recognize that a society that was built upon oppression, even as we make progression now, a lot of it has to do with this concept called civilization. And so when they no longer need us to be the physical labor that we once was, then they change the game, and then they continually work on you mentally to incapacitate you so that you're not able to compete in the same market and in the same level that they are operating on. And those of us that do manage to be able to compete at a higher level, now they want to make you the individual. And by making you an individual, they want to separate you from what? Again, the black family. Separate you again from being able to build a structure that you can work toward within your community and build your community up. So let's take away from this timeline the fact that it is really up to us. All of these things that we're seeing in here are outside things that continue to influence our behavior as a people by keeping us separated from one another. The solution is we have to depend upon each other. We have to go back to recognizing that we have the power to uplift each other in ourselves, and we must want to do that. So we have to redevelop the appetite to want to be better for one another, and then hold ourselves accountable as a society to do such. That's all I wanted to say, brother.
Absolutely, brother. I'd like to wrap it up with that, unless anyone else wants to chime in. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone for joining. I definitely feel motivated and inspired to do more. So I'm gonna continue to build with y'all. Somebody got to call next, though. Somebody got to do another Brother Robert Ward break.
Appreciate you, Ron Deuce, on that one, brother. It's always great hearing other perspectives. I'm learning from what you presented. Being able to sit back and hear someone else tell tell the same stuff in just a different way, oftentimes will hit areas to where, oh, okay, I see a little bit more now. I see it more clearly. So it's just real good for us to help build each other up. So thank you for
Absolutely.
that, sir.
For sure. All right, y'all have a good night. All power to the people.
All power to the people.